During the COVID-19 pandemic in May 2020, Detective Benoit Blanc is hired by Helen Brand to investigate the death of her twin sister, Cassandra Andy Brand. Andy had committed suicide just 2 days ago, and the news of her death has not been announced just yet. On the day of her suicide, she had sent an email to Miles and his entourage, threatening to have a piece of evidence that she can use to bring his entire empire down. Helen is sure that Andy was murdered. Helen could not find the evidence supposedly in a red envelope anywhere in her apartment. While she was there, she receives an invitation from Miles, for Andy, to attend a murder mystery at his private island. Andy was the CEO of Alpha, a technology company she co-founded with Miles Bron, after refusing to consent to Miles releasing Clear, a potentially dangerous hydrogen-based alternative fuel. Miles ousted Andy from the company, winning a lawsuit she filed against him. Andy was left broke and penniless. Andy's case failed when she was unable to prove that Alpha's founding ideas were hers, in part due to the perjured testimonies of her and Miles' old friends. Alpha head scientist Lionel Toussaint, Connecticut Governor Claire DeBella, fashion designer Bertie J., and men's rights streamer Duke Cody, a Twitch streamer. Claire's campaign for the Senate is funded by Miles. Also, Miles is pressuring Lionel to clear Clear for testing on a manned spaceflight. Miles decides to host a murder mystery weekend at his mansion, the Glass Onion, on his private island in Greece. As Andy was invited and news of her death has not been released, Blanc instructs Helen to pose as Andy for the weekend to help him investigate. Blanc knows that Andy's killer will know the truth about Helen and won't hesitate to kill again to cover their tracks. Reading through Andy's journal, they both figure out that 10 years ago, Andy was the leader of the pack. She introduced Miles to the group. Miles helped make the careers of Bertie, Lionel, Duke, and Claire. Andy had the idea of Alpha on a cocktail napkin. 2 years ago, Miles met a scientist in Peru who sold him on this new hydrogen fuel. Miles is willing to bet Alpha on it. Andy stops him, but Miles worked the lawyers to cut Andy out of Alpha completely. Andy sues, but she didn't have the cocktail napkin to prove that Alpha was her idea. The entourage testifies for Miles and against Andy. Helen suspects that one of the 5 killed Andy after she found the cocktail napkin hidden inside one of the books in her apartment, where she had written down the idea for Alpha, which would discredit Miles and prove that all 5 committed perjury during the lawsuit. They join Lionel, Claire, Bertie, and Duke in traveling to the island. Bertie's assistant Peg and Duke's girlfriend Whiskey, Twitch channel assistant, also accompany the group. Upon their arrival, Miles questions Blanc's presence, cause he never sent the invitation box to Blanc, but allows him to stay, assuming that he was invited as a joke arranged by one of the other guests, who reset the invitation puzzles box and sent it to Blanc as a prank. The group doesn't know that Blanc was hired by Helen and that Andy is actually Helen. Miles has sent all of his staff home to spend a normal weekend with his friends. Bertie was a big star back when Miles was just starting out. Now the situation is reversed, and Bertie needs Miles's support to even survive. Duke carries a gun at all times. Miles calls all his friends disrupting people. Bertie was a top fashion designer who had a bad run of a Halloween costume before coming back strongly with a designer sweatpants just before COVID hit. Duke is the first influential person with a million followers on Twitch. Claire is leading the female charge on Capitol Hill. Lionel didn't wait to finish his education before he started disrupting science. Miles believes that with Alpha he is also disrupting the world. He is breaking the system itself. Andy says that Miles invested in Bertie's sweatpants business when no one was touching her with a 10-foot pole. He also set up Duke on YouTube and his media empire after he was banned from Twitch for selling rhino bones-infused boner pills to teenage boys. Lionel works for Miles, and Claire's campaign is funded by him. Bertie is being forced by Miles to take responsibility for hiring a sweatshop in Bangladesh to manufacture her clothing line, and Duke is attempting to coerce Miles into giving him a position at Alpha News by using whiskey to seduce him. Blanc sees all this. In a week, Miles plans to announce Clear to the world. Clear is a solid hydrogen fuel derived from seawater. Lionel objects and says he needs 2 years to test and ensure its stability and safety. Miles says his entire island is being run on Clear. Helen searches for clues that could lead to Andy's killer, but only discovers motives for Lionel. He will destroy Lionel if he does not approve of the manned space rocket run on Clear. Claire, he can easily withdraw funding if she does not approve his Clear power plant. Bertie, Bertie is being made to take the fall for the Bangladesh sweatshop to cover his role as the main investor. He will buy Bertie's shares for $30 million if she takes the fall, and Duke, while making love with Miles, Whiskey gets him to confess that he has no plans to put Duke in Alpha News, something that he had been dangling in front of Duke for a while, to kill Miles instead. Lionel and Claire have staked their professional reputations to support Clear, only to discover its potentially dangerous qualities afterwards. Helen figures out that after Andy sent the email, Duke, Claire, Bertie, and Lionel came to Andy's house to stop her from using the envelope, but Duke was there first before anyone else got there. Helen believes each one of them had the opportunity to kill Andy. Blanc deliberately ruins Miles's planned murder mystery by solving it immediately, even before the murder has taken place, in order to allow Helen more time to focus on the guests. Miles shows Blanc the cocktail napkin on which he claims he drew the idea of Alpha and showed it to Andy. While this was going on, Helen searched the rooms of Miles' entourage to find the envelope they stole from Andy. She can't find anything. Just then, media announces the news of Andy's death, but only Helen sees it on her phone. Later that night, as the group parties, Duke suddenly collapses and dies after drinking from Miles's glass, apparently by accident. Blanc wants the police and medical services to be called to the island, but they cannot come till low tide, not before 6 a.m. the following morning. The group panics and suspects Andy to be the killer before discovering that Duke's pistol is missing. In the ensuing chaos, the group splits up. Blanc finds Helen, who has been searching for Andy's cocktail napkin, and instructs her to search Miles's office, where Miles had shown Blanc the cocktail napkin that he had supposedly used to draw his idea for Alpha. An unknown assailant shoots Helen in the chest, but the bullet is blocked by Andy's journal in her jacket pocket. After helping fake Helen's death, Blanc gathers the rest of the group in Miles's art room, while Helen searches for the napkin in Miles's office, and concludes that Miles committed both murders. After Miles learned of the napkin's existence from Lionel, he killed Andy to prevent her from revealing it to the public. Immediately after the murder, he was seen leaving the house by Duke, who came to Andy's house first and alone, who deduced Miles' involvement with Andy's death once news of it was released on the internet during the party. Duke attempted to blackmail Miles, prompting Miles to poison Duke with pineapple juice, which Duke was allergic to, before using Duke's pistol to shoot Helen. Helen locates the napkin in Miles's office and reveals her true identity to the group. However, Miles burns the napkin and brags that there is no evidence against him. With Blanc unable to help, and the group unwilling to side with her, with Blanc's encouragement, Helen destroys Miles's glass sculptures, which motivates the others to do the same, before triggering the Clear-powered mansion to explode by lighting a bonfire and throwing a sample of the fuel into it. This destroys the glass onion and the Mona Lisa, which Miles had on loan from the Louvre. With Miles's reputation ruined due to the painting's destruction and Clear being proven dangerous, the group decides they will testify against him. Helen and Blanc sit on the beach as they watch the police arrive.